To the afternoon session, and we're getting pretty close to the end of the school. Professor Fekete is going to do the talk tomorrow morning, and I am going to talk more about the gold standard and real bills. That's really the topic for this afternoon. We already touched on some of it, but there's quite a few more interesting things. But Professor can't be here, he's not here, so I'd like to read and talk about his critique of the quantity theory of money. I critiqued it from point of view of the GDP and the tendency to just ignore the velocity of money, and also from the Mengerian point of view of constant marginal utility. And here's his critique. Equilibrium economics, more especially the quantity theory of money, the latter-day champion of which is Milton Friedman, the guy with the trained horse, holds that a regime of floating foreign exchange rates is absolutely necessary as a balancing mechanism of foreign trade. By floating, they mean sinking. If a country imports more than it exports, then the value of its currency will drop in the foreign exchange markets. As a result, the price of imported goods will rise, limiting imports, and at the same time, the price of this country's exports in foreign markets will drop, boosting exports. These effects, supposedly, redress trade imbalance. As a corollary, it is further asserted that if a drop in foreign exchange rates does not occur on its own accord, then the government is fully justified in pushing them down by hook or crook. This is a vicious theory concocted to justify the government in engineering a destruction of the value of the currency. For decades, the U.S. government has been trying to reverse its unfavorable trade balance with Japan by crying down the value of the dollar. However, in spite of the great success of the U.S. government to debase its currency, trade imbalance has continued to worsen. It showed signs of abating only when the Japanese government also started debasing its own currency, the yen. So, there's your race to the bottom. Disequilibrium analysis shows that if a country runs export surpluses, this will not cause an inevitable increase in domestic retail prices as predicted by equilibrium theory. The discount rate will drop in response to the inflow of foreign exchange. Merchants will draw bills on foreign countries with a higher discount rate. This will repel the invasion of foreign exchange. Higher consumer demand will be met by an expanded offering on the shelves of the shopkeepers thanks to the lower discount rate. By the time the consumer is ready to spend the extra income, the extra merchandise will be in place. Conversely, if a country is stricken with a bad harvest or by some other natural calamity destroying crops, property, and goods, then there will be an immediate increase in the discount rate. Retail prices will not rise inevitably. The stricken country, thanks to its higher discount rate, is an attractive place on which to draw bills or a place to send goods. This translates into an immediate influx of short-term capital from abroad in the form of the most urgently needed consumer goods. Of course, if the bill market is sabotaged through government intervention, in brackets, in allowing the banking system to preempt the spontaneous circulation of bills of exchange, then the influx of foreign exchange will spill over to the stock, bond, and real estate markets, where rampant speculation may cause huge price increases. This may indeed lead in due course to a collapse, as it has happened in Japan, and as it will probably happen in the United States. The collapse must squarely be blamed on the vicious equilibrium theory of foreign exchange, suggesting that trade imbalances can be cured by government-inspired debasement of the currency. This equilibrium theory treats the problem of trade imbalances as a coordination problem. It analyzes short-term capital movement as it responds to the widening spread between the discount rate and the marginal productivity of social circulating capital. It takes into account arbitrage between the bill market and the consumer goods market. The mechanical quantity theory of money and other equilibrium theories are blind, barren, and misleading. And that's what he says about it.
What's the title of that paper?
Critique, that's lecture 18. I think you guys have this. Critique of Quantity Theory of Money. That you haven't got that? Oh, okay. Well, you get it. So that's quite a mouthful. In my book, I talk about the golden strap. And when I was a kid in school, high school, there was such thing as a strap. And as I was in high school for a little more than I was supposed to be, but anyways, I was there for 5 years. And in all that time, the strap was used once. And all the kids knew the one who got the strap, and we all agreed that he deserved the strap. And it was the right thing to do, and that was the end of it. And we all, well, I personally got called into the vice principal's office more than once, dressed down for not behaving as required, but I never got the strap, because we all knew it was there, and we knew there was a line, and if you go over that line, you get punished. Of course, today this is unheard of, corporal punishment. Anyway, so compare this to gold. The role of gold in the central bank is, they laugh at it, it sits in the vault gathering dust. But this is a very important role, because the day it starts to move in serious amounts, something is wrong. So let's say a trade deficit occurs for whatever reason, and the bill market goes, the bill market fixes the problem. But maybe it's a longer term issue, and it goes on and on and on, and the bills keep, they're just too much offset, and the payments keep going, because eventually in 90 days these bills are paid. Well, at some point gold will start to move, and these deficits must be covered by gold, or surpluses, vice versa. But everybody knows this, and no country wants to be guilty of giving away its gold. So policies are run in such a way as to avoid this, and very rarely does gold actually move, because at the end of the day, it's real goods that are traded. You trade grain for, now the United States is a great exporter of wheat and corn and whatnot, and the Chinese send other stuff here. Well, under a gold standard, these two net out. And the real bills facilitate this trade, but at the end of the day, they net out, and only differences in trade are transferred to gold coin or whatever. And so if a country runs policies that are violating this balance, then the gold will run, but that's the only time. So, that's the professor's critique, and clearly it's very straightforward. Any comments or questions about that? About what I just read? Yes.
How did the real bills net it out first, or take care of the minor fluctuations? Is it like
well, because if there's a difference in the discount rate, they tend to go there, and then they tend to go the other way. You can also look at the discount rate as a way to invite gold in. It earns more there, which is the opposite of goods. So, the London trade house, and I think Sandeep can probably back me up, and they said, well, we can have all the gold in the world we want. We can attract gold from the moon if we increase the discount rate enough. Okay, anything else? Okay, so the theme of my talk is the gold standard and real bills. So we're going to try to look at what an unadulterated gold standard is versus gold standard, which can be any kind of gold standard, and what does it really mean, and how did it come about, and how was it adulterated. Now think back to, originally gold and silver were sitting in bulk, and you chip off a hunk of silver or gold to make your payment by weighing it out. And this was not very efficient. So soon enough, people invented the idea of coining the gold or the silver into pre-measured units. So when the Romans, and I'm not going to blame them specifically, but just as an example, they wanted to have more money in the treasury. They decided to clip the coins, make them smaller, and therefore have more coins. Now, does that mean they had more money? Well, if you count the coins, instead of 10 coins, they had 11 coins, but the amount of silver didn't change. It was a perception of more money. And that's the first, very most primitive way to try to stretch the gold or make it go for them. Didn't work. Clipping coins didn't work because people start to see that the size, the weight is wrong. Oh, we'll only pay you whatever it's worth. So the thing was discounted. Then along comes a little bit smarter way to try to cheat this thing, to adulterate the actual silver. Pour in, lead or copper or some other metal with cheap metal. So it looks like a regular coin, the same size, it's not clipped. And supposedly it's worth the same. But again, the misconception is that the number of coins is the value. And here again, this is a quantity thing versus a quality thing. Just think about that. So soon enough, the market realized that these coins were adulterated and they were discounted to the real value of the silver in it. And of course, the Roman Empire went from 100% silver to, at the end, 5-10%. The coins were almost worthless. So this little trick was discovered. And then along came paper. Now, as long as paper is fully redeemable, in other words, it's a banknote backed by gold and silver, or real bills maturing into gold or silver within 91 days, they are in this certain respect as good as gold. They're not, obviously, because they are separated, but their value reflects the value of the gold redeemability. Now, we talked a lot about the spread here. Well, there's no spread in redeeming something, because this certificate, this note, entitles the bearer to a specific weight or mass of gold as defined by, the description of that piece of paper. So you don't buy and sell when you redeem. You simply flip it. You say, give me my gold, or give me the equivalent gold. Well, okay, so at this point, we are unadulterated gold standard stage because we've got real money, and the banknotes are a convenience thing. I mean, nobody wants to lug around wheelbarrow full of silver coins or even buckets full of gold to make big purchases. The banks do that, or maybe in those days discount houses, whatever they were called. And clearly, if the demand for gold at the bank increases, they just allow their portfolio of bills to mature into gold. They automatically mature into gold approximately, 45 days, all of it on average, because it's 90 days maximum. So every day the bank has more gold, and if people don't withdraw gold or redeem their gold, I should say, their paper note for the gold builds up and the bank goes looking around for more bills to buy. So this is fine. Now, and then, of course, if there is other stuff backing the notes than bills or gold, then the problems start with, and this is called fractional reserve. What it really means is the balance sheet is not as liquid as it should be, and the bank cannot guarantee with all certainty that it can redeem all the gold demand on it, and especially if the actual gold is a small amount and more bonds or government paper or whatever. So the real answer is to stick to the unadulterated gold standard, but that's not what happened. What happened was a central bank was created to lend money to these banks under stress, to give them more credit so they could afford to pay out. But there's a problem with that too, because at some point the central bank runs out, and today we're at that point. So that's the degradation. Now, the value of the paper decreases as its redeemability is gone. Once it's not redeemable, back in the gold standard, the unadulterated gold standard is a gold coin standard. So the first step was coin. And the backing was bills and cash gold, period. Now what does coin mean? It means the average person had the coin in their pocket, and as the professor discussed it, they had the right, and nobody questioned their right to hoard the gold, spend the gold, save the gold, melt it into jewelry, whatever. It was their property, no problem. And this came to an end under Mr. Roosevelt, he's in the US, and it was replaced by an old bullion standard. So no more coins circulating. A lot of these coins were melted down and turned into bars. And only large institutions, banks and so on, had the bullion. So people didn't have the vote anymore, and this is where the trouble really started. And then it went from here to Bretton Woods. Now you know what Bretton Woods was, that this was gone. The US held the gold and backed the US dollar with gold, and only international exchanges were allowed. In other words, other countries, other central banks could claim their US, that is, redeem their US dollars into gold at the US Treasury, the US Bank. So it came from the most democratic way to less democratic to international, and then it was gone, and this was Nixon. This whole thing ended. So the first year, the gold standard was adulterated, turning from a gold coin standard to bullion standard, Bretton Woods, and complete fiat. Anybody agree, disagree? I think I saw some, did I see some hands?
How's 1913 coming into play with the Fed?
Well, the original charter of the Fed did not allow the Fed to keep government paper on its books. It only allowed bills. So maybe I'll get rid of this. Let's say, I'll just give a number, 1/3 gold, 2/3 bills. In fact, Philip sent me this piece of information. The Reich Bank before World War I had I don't know if it was a regulation to the banks, German banks, that they needed to keep their portfolio in this ratio. 1/3 gold, physical gold, coins. Now once this started to change, what happened was the first adulteration came about, and let's say they went to something like this. And I don't know this, I'm just 1/3 bills and 1/3 treasuries, government paper, long-term paper. Already there's a problem that it's long-term because it's subject to market fluctuation and so on. And remember, against this, banknotes were issued and could circulate. And if somebody wanted to redeem their banknote, they wouldn't redeem their banknote for bills, obviously. They redeem it for gold. So the gold supply of the bank takes a drop, but these bills mature into gold automatically. That's their nature. So it's not a problem. And more gold, well, portfolio shrinks. And if there's a large demand, sudden surge of demand, they go to the bill market and cash it in. So this is all very, very liquid. But once this is in here, it's subject to abuse. And if there's demand for gold, what happens to this stuff? Can the governments even pay it? So the standard is now adulterated by, this is called the fiduciary component. The fiduciary is an Italian name, it means trust. So it's built on trust. Well, this is built on trust too, but it's quite a different level. They say between cup and lip there's many a slip, but with a real bill the cup is already touching your lip, and whereas the farther away you are from this, longer maturities, more potential losses, blah blah blah. So it's not working very well. And the idea is that more and more paper, and then this grew. Now, while there was a partial gold standard, partial backing, the US dollar was backed 25% by the good stuff, and 75% was the not so good stuff, the backing. And the Swiss franc, which was considered the strongest currency for many years, was 40%. So they had 40% good backing, but 60% was not. And of course, the final, today, this is gone, and this is gone. There's no good stuff. There's only, and these treasury bonds, which were considered inferior, are now the superior. They're the very best paper until recently. Pristine paper, backed by the full credit, faith and credit of the US government. So our faith and credit are a mirage and they're subject to disappearing. Whereas gold and bills that turn into gold and bills that are representing real value are not, or you're out of the system. So how can it possibly work?
that 40% of the money was backed by gold?
Well, back in the redeemable days, when the...
Before 33?
Yeah, and it didn't happen simultaneously. I mean, some countries pulled out sooner, and actually, when Roosevelt did his thing, Americans weren't even allowed to own gold at all.
From that point on?
From that point on, until the 70s. But then in the 70s, it was no longer gold as money, it was gold as just another commodity, just another commodity.
But when the central bank, the Fed, started in 1913,
yeah.
at that point, the backing of the money
It was supposed to be this.
Supposed.
And it was, but what, sorry.
Yeah, so you just gratuitously said 40%, but we don't have...
No, there's some numbers out there, you can look it up, there were some numbers.
40% was the Swiss franc until
The Swiss franc, yeah.
25%.
Yeah, this was a number that I guess they felt it was reasonably, it was enough, and so on and so on. I mean, I don't think it's right. You know, it's a slippery slope. You're not yet in the soup, but you're on your way there.
And you're saying that there is a zero gold?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that your bills are not redeemable. Your bank notes are not redeemable in gold whatsoever. You can't walk in. If you go, it used to say on the U.S. dollar bill, this entitles bearer to so many ounces of gold held in the
What is
U.S. Treasury.
circulating is not redeemable on demand, but when you say 25% or whatever is backing, that's a different thing.
It is a different thing because it was all redeemable theoretically.
Theoretically, yeah.
Okay? This bill entitles bearer to fixed quantity of fine gold or silver based on the fixed value and the ratio and whatnot, except it wasn't there. The backing was not all there. So as long as only a few people redeemed their gold, the system worked. But if everybody wanted it, there would be a problem. And of course this is sort of a gimmick, and you're playing the percentages. And of course the whole system was considered stable because there's a central bank, there's so many other banks, and we can move the gold around. And not everybody is going to want their gold at once. And it happened, there were runs on the bank. But then the central bank was able to right the thing by shifting assets around or more borrowing. But today this doesn't happen at all. Money is not redeemable. Okay? So I think we need to look, just, the previous lecture I was talking about the real bills, and make sure we're all on the same page here exactly. I think I said something like, there's money here, and there's real goods there, right? And there's an interchange. Now a real bill, this is a link between the two. Let's say, here's your real bill, whatever it is, and here it says, 33.5 ounce gold. That's the face value. And then it says, I don't know, what's a good thing here? 300 tons of coal, or whatever. Now, this represents the real good, the real value, and this represents the monetary value. And this 300 tons of coal is delivered, and it's redeemed in this money, which is the gold money. Okay?
Expiry dates.
On expiry date, on maturity date, face value in money. But the goods are already delivered, and it may be other stuff, who cares? It could be a bunch of Christmas turkeys. Is that okay? So if there's any changes in the bids and ask and so on, and the same 300 tons of coal may change to, well, whatever, could be 34. And that bill drawn against a similar quantity of the same underlying good matures into 34 ounces of gold, or 33. So that's why I call it a link between the real world and the monetary world. Yes?
Is it comparable to a futures contract to some extent?
No. No, a futures contract is comparable to a forward sale. Let's say a farmer plants his crop in the spring and hopes to harvest whatever bushels of wheat in the fall. And at the time of planting, he doesn't really know what that's going to pay back. So somebody agrees to buy it from him right now for delivery in the future. In a way, it's almost the inverse of that. It's the current delivery and a future payment. So it's a form of credit. It's not a forward sale. Does that help?
But the price is fixed.
Well, the price is negotiated before the sale is made. See, the sale is made, there's a bid, an offer, and so on, in the physical market for the physical good.
It has been delivered already.
And it's agreed the price, and there's a delivery date, and on delivery, boom, and the guy who agrees to pay says, I accept. And he signs his name. So now he owes this, and he's got that. So he bloody well better sell all that before it comes due, or he's in a bit of a problem.
So when he rents accept, he owns the coal and
He
he's
owns
owing the money, or
that's correct. This is to be
the
paid.
value of coal in money
Okay.
at maturity.
There's also a due date. Okay? So let's say, winter is coming and people are going to want to buy coal. So the coal retailer orders in, September, 300 tons of coal. And it arrives October 1st. The delivery date, October 1st. On October 1st, he says, I accept, and I agree to pay 91 days later. November, December, January 1st, or whatever. Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be February 1st. If it's 3 months, I don't care.
No,
Is it? I'm sure.
31 December, there you go.
Whatever. Someday in the future. Okay, December 31. And that's when this money is collected or paid or whatever. The gold changes hands. This amount of gold on this date, on the due date.
Question. On October 1st, the monetary value of 300 tons of coal was 34 ounces.
Yes, it was. That's the agreed payment.
Okay. On December 29th, the coal value is 35
Yep.
ton or
It's exactly the same because it's the same coal. It's 300 tons of coal. That has not changed. Now, I think I know where you're going. Where does the discount come in? Well, let's suppose if the due date is December 31st, but this coal merchant who retails the coal has got the gold sitting in his till. He's got 40 ounces of gold sitting there already from other places. 34 of it. Okay, let's slow down here. When he sells the coal, he makes a markup. Right? This is the wholesale price. 34 ounce for 300 tons. He's not going to sell that gold in parcels, that coal in parcels for a sum total of 34 ounces. He's going to make a profit. Okay? So let's suppose, I don't know, is it 40? This will be the retail price. Right? Is that okay so far? Now, suppose it's a bloody cold winter and everybody wants coal like crazy, and instead of selling all this by December 31st, he sells it in a month. So by November 1st, he's got 40 ounces in his till. He sold it. So what's he going to do with this money? Well, 6 of it is his profit or his expenses. That's his doing business. That's his markup, not necessarily his profit. That's his markup. Okay? And this 34 ounces is allocated to pay this bill, which is coming due. Now, if you got 34 ounces of gold sitting there that is yours but not yours, allocated, what do you do with it?
Sell it.
Sell it? To who? For what? On this day, you bloody well better have that money. Okay, so really, it kind of sits there idle. Unless he goes back to the coal wholesaler. This bill, it's not due for another 60 days, but I'm ready to pay it early for a small consideration. So he says, I'll pay you now 33.8 or God knows what. And the coal wholesaler may say, I'll get my gold sooner? Yeah, that's worth something to me. We'll negotiate, and they maybe settle at 33.9 ounces. Paid, done. There's the discount. Difference between this and this. The face value and the actual monetary transaction. Now, if they wait till maturity, this must be paid. But if it's paid early, okay?
It's pretty much the closest thing that currently exists to it is a short-term, zero-coupon, variably redeemable bond.
Yeah, commercial paper, I think this is what is described as commercial paper. Yeah. But the difference there is, this is between the two merchants directly. There's no middleman at this point, and there's no bank taking an extra profit or a cut. There's nothing going on, and it's very clean.
Yeah, and the stuff was delivered.
Yeah, the stuff was delivered. That's where it all starts.
That's the important difference.
That's okay. And now we're getting fairly deep into this. The professor was talking about the acceptance house and rolling over bills and all kind of stuff on merchandise that's not moving. That's what it is. It must be paid with gold on due date. And if it's not, it's fraudulent as far as being a real bill. Now, if you want to call it a bond and a different market and a different thing, longer term credit, sure, that's fine. But not here. Yeah, okay?
Yep.
All right. So, this is important to understand how it works, because this establishes, it goes back to my previous little sketch there that I think people like. Philip liked it anyways. Gold plus bills times velocity equals, and if there's more, now let's suppose what happens if the guy sells his coal early. Well, he's going to order more coal, and another bill will be drawn, and the same exercise happens again. Or suppose the coal is not selling well, it's a hot, relatively warm winter. Well, he doesn't want to pay it early. He doesn't have as much cash in his till. But if the discount rate is high enough, maybe he will. So it's played out, and there's arbitrage. And of course, there are umpteen merchants with umpteen different propensity to spend or propensity to spend to buy coal or milk or whatever it is. And then it all averages out, or it all plays out in the arbitrage between the various merchants. And in that role, the discount house has a role to play in allowing more participants into this market, not just the coal merchant directly. I mean, that's vertical circulation. Horizontal is when the coal merchant may buy milk bills or what's popular, some ice cream bills drawn against a truckload of ice cream driving up to our favorite ice cream joint, or Okay? Louis there? Yeah.
You have your hand up.
Yes.
And what happens if the guy who, let's say, bought the coal goes broke?
Good point. Well, first of all, if this is, let's just go step by step. If this is a long-term shipment overseas, there's insurance and whatnot. And I would perhaps consider that there's a claim against this guy, and this is where the trust factor comes in, and this is where the open portfolio and the description of the goods on it. Anybody, before they buy it, they look at this and they say, some guy is buying 300 tons of coal, heating coal for a summer. No, I don't think so. But if it's in a cold winter, it makes more sense. The market analyzes this, and of course, if that company goes bankrupt, well, there may be insurance, there may be other sources of money. I can't really answer that directly.
But
It's a good question, I have to admit.
Well,
Yes.
Rudy, first of all, there still are real goods behind that bill.
Perhaps there are
And
some.
they are in high demand, so even the curator of the insolvent estate can get rid of that at a fairly good price, so the damage probably will be there, but it will be a lot less than when there is no goods or just hot air.
Sure, and that's a good point. And I didn't expect that question. Make me think, if there's a bankruptcy, all the assets of this coal merchant go on the block, and his building and his delivery truck or horse and carriage and whatever may go to the creditors, or will go to the creditors. And I don't think bankruptcies happen overnight. I think whoever sells the whole wholesaler knows what his retailers are doing and what position they are. Has he been slow paying? Has he been reducing his turnover? Whatever. I mean, this is played out between pretty closely associated businesses. This particular example. Yeah. Behind you, sorry. Yeah.
A short question to the real, okay, the price was 34, as far as I can remember. It's
Face value.
This supplier supplied a lot of the merchants with coal, so the price drops down. And the maturity, and I cannot earn 34 anymore, I can earn only 33 bucks.
That's your problem. You owe me 34 and you will pay it. If you want coal from me, and if you want coal for your son's business and your next generation, you pay it. And it doesn't mean he can't be paid. He can go to the bank and borrow. He can use his profits to pay it. I mean, he made a markup. So all he'll say is, I couldn't sell it for that price. My entrepreneurship wasn't perfect, so I made no profit this month. But the bill must be paid, as written.
The same as any other invoice, if you know it is.
Yeah, it's an invoice. That's a good way to put it. Today they call them an invoice. And just think about it. The wholesaler sells stuff to many, many retailers, and actually the total of this is called accounts receivable, and a bank will lend against it because it's an asset. So, Louis?
Isn't a fundamental difference between the concept of real bills under a gold standard and credit today under the existing monetary system? Is it not that today money is lent at interest, and therefore you need to pay now? Pay now, so money is advanced now, but you need to pay that plus interest back at, let's say, 91 days to stay with the bills period. Whereas under the real bills, no payment is expected until 91 days. So
Absolutely.
it's a form of credit, of course, because you get the goods and you can start your business and you can start selling them without having actually had to part with money, whereas, and therefore, there is no need to increase the money supply to meet the cost of credit.
I'm listening to you.
Whereas, under the existing monetary regime, interest is to be paid, and that's over and above the existing monetary supply.
Okay, credit is divided into two kinds of credit. One is borrowing, which is this kind of current going to the bank and borrowing, and clearing it. Professor talked about this as well. Okay, now, if you borrow money to buy a car, for example, there's an interest rate, there's collateral, there's terms, terms of payback and all that. When there's clearing, none of that. You get the goods and you pay them when the goods are sold. So yeah, there is credit because that payment is due down the road. What is credit? Credit is an exchange of present and future goods. That's the definition of credit. Here you get the present good, which is your car, and you pay it back later at a cost. And here you get the material, the goods right now, and the sale of the goods will clear the debt. So,
My point is, I mean, I just realized this, trying to express it in a way that's clearer. But there is no cost of credit under gold standard or real bills. There's no cost to society, put it this way, to society for drawing real bills, and therefore allowing credit and goods to circulate. Whereas under the existing monetary regime,
keep going, this is wonderful.
you want to buy something, you don't have the money now, you have to pay now, we'll lend you the money, and you pay it back with interest. So there's a cost on society to operate.
Yeah, there is.
That did not exist or does not exist under gold standard.
And who collects this interest?
Yeah, the bank.
Aha. You're absolutely right. This is really, and that's why we talk about social circulating capital. It's the most efficient way to get these important goods to the consumer. Again, in my book, I talk about if you buy a TV, let's say you walk into a store and you want to buy a TV, and it's at a certain discount, a price, whatever, you can buy it on cash, no problem. You could write a check, well, it comes from your cash account, presumably, so again, no problem. Or you can buy it on a credit card. In other words, borrow at that point. And if you do that, if you borrow, you pay interest to the credit card company. Now, if you use a home equity line of credit, you're still borrowing, but you're paying a lower rate because there's a big chunk of collateral behind it. Whereas in a credit card, there's no collateral. The credit card company...
You always have to pay more than you...
Yeah, well, okay. Now, suppose you know the storekeeper, and it's you've been going to this... You don't go to the clerk, you go to the guy who owns the store, and you've bought a lot of stuff from him, and you haggle, and you negotiate, and say, you know what, give me a better price. So, well, this is my best price. I can't give you a better price or I'll lose money. But you're a good customer. I'll give you terms. You pay me in 60 days. There's your free credit. He just gives it to you because he trusts you, and you take the TV and you pay it in 60 days and he's not charging interest. So, it's a similar thing. Of course, usually it doesn't play out that way, but it certainly could.
There's one more question. Back to Ludwig's question regarding counterparty risk or credit risk. You said it's not quite excluded. Obviously, there could happen something. Could it be that in the case of whatever happens, this guy can't get rid of the coal?
Sure, it could happen.
Yeah, that the coal serves as collateral, special segregated to the bill.
Well, okay, I'm sorry.
Which would make this a lot more safer, because if you just have right and claim on the usual recovery rate, usually it's not lower.
Okay. First of all, let's not use coal. Let's use cabbages or turkeys. Chop, turkey meat. How long is it going to be collateral? A few days? It's not collateral. That's out. It's a question of the absolute conviction that people will buy coal because otherwise they'll freeze, or they will buy turkey because otherwise they'll go hungry, and that's why it has to circulate rapidly. And if it doesn't circulate, i.e. the coal is not sold, then the coal retailer has to use some other source of money to pay that bill. And it may come from his own working capital, he may have to borrow money from the bank, whatever. That's what it is. And it's built on, that's why the speed is so important. And it's only the most urgently needed goods that qualify for this kind of clearing. Otherwise, you have to go and borrow and put up, and they're not going to accept, go to the bank and say, I want to sell coal, I'll use my coal as collateral. You got to be kidding. They're not going to give you collateral on something that's sold every day. You put your building up as collateral. Even if you borrow against your accounts receivable today, maybe you only get a small, I don't know what the percentage would be, but the whole accounts receivable will only support so much bank credit because they don't want to take the risk. Yeah? Yes.
So basically the real bill can only be drawn against real goods.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Only against... Okay.
Only. Absolutely. That's real bill. And I'm glad I'm crunching away at this, because this has to be hammered home.
And fast circulating goods.
And
goods
fast
already in demand.
Goods already in demand.
Already.
Yes, yes, yes.
No services allowed?
I'm sorry?
No services?
Well, services are a different story. That's a more personal thing, and people don't. You don't buy services from a wholesaler. You just do it. What's a service? A haircut? You know, I mean,
consulting.
Tax consultancy, for example.
I'm sorry, one at a time.
Tax consultancy for a year.
Tax consultancy.
A contract to do tax consultancy. Well, that's a good question.
How does that mature in...
It can't
The end
mature
of the year, when you've done your work.
It can't?
How do you know you get work?
He's a tax consultant.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay.
How do you know you get work?
No, but okay, I'm a company and I make an agreement with him that he is responsible for my tax accounts, and when he's done it, like the year passed, and he does the accounts, then I pay because he's done it.
Okay. Can I answer that? First of all, we're limiting this to 91 days. So 1 year is out. Second of all, is this part of the social circulating capital? Is this a good and urgent demand that a consumer will pay a gold coin for at the retail level? Clink! I don't think so. This is an agreement between two companies, and as long as you're both consenting adults, you do what you want.
What is that called, Rudy, though? Where they accept the note?
The acceptance house?
Yeah.
Well, that's
the
a...
acceptance house.
Perhaps the acceptance house would, based on some other collateral, they would put their money in. So I can imagine that if you're the service provider and you have this contract, you go to the acceptance house, I got a contract, lend me against it. And they'll say, yeah, put up your house as collateral and we'll lend you against it, or put up something. Why not? They don't care. All they want to be sure is that they're paid. So they take a big chunk of collateral to make sure that they're covered. I don't think service come into this very much. But don't quote me. I'm not.
There is, I don't know, 50% of the work done is service in our society.
That's fine. Now let's. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. First of all, that's a problem because no society can survive on one person cutting the other's hair and the other person cutting my hair.
Yeah, sure.
It ain't gonna work.
There has to be done.
There has to be real wealth. Yeah.
Whatever.
So then the other thing is that the real bills is not the whole economy. It's just a big chunk of it. And the reason we're talking about it is because the gold standard cannot stand without real bills.
Yeah.
Cannot. Must have it. And people are not familiar with it. People know what money is. You say, well, use gold as money instead of paper money. You pay your bills. Of course, it's not that simple. But not too many people understand bills and invoicing and the stuff behind it that's vitally important. Okay. So there's also a bond market. There are equity markets under gold. But for example, gold bonds are quite different from bonds today. In the old days, bonds were purchased by widows and orphans as security for their old age. There was no bond speculation. It was for income.
Okay, but how do you pay your tax consultant?
You don't have a tax consultant. Why you need a tax consultant? Everything is simple. There is no income tax.
How do you pay a lawyer?
This falls outside the social circulating capital.
It's just a whole...
You know,
to pay with carrots? Or?
this is very interesting. Let's talk about a tax accountant.
It has to be a tax accountant, some kind of consulting.
That's fine.
In founding your company or
Sure.
whatever it is. Or
Well,
in the account.
you pay them cash. What's the problem with that? You pay them a gold coin.
Where's the cash in this system?
Where is the cash?
It's not just gold.
I pay was 1 gram of gold or something like that.
Yeah. You know, don't lose sight of this.
Or the note that's redeemable in gold. For that amount. Or the note that is redeemable in gold for that amount of gold. Yeah, that's for cash. But just on service, I think we have to be careful here that we sort of separate goods from services completely, because goods are produced out of people being of service.
Well, that's labor cost. They're employees.
Well, I consider that a service. An economy is only equal to the sum of the service it provides.
If you're telling me the economy is only equal to all the labor that goes into everything, I have to agree with you.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean.
But don't forget, the
So
goal...
the service is not just advice. Okay.
Service on the consumer level is what I call service. At higher level, this is your input basket, output basket.
Production level.
It's production level, and there's engineers. Our engineers, production employees or service employees, but they contribute to the cost of those goods, and maybe they contribute to improvement of goods and a whole bunch of other stuff. At the end of the day, even digging gold out of the ground, you can keep going far enough that it's all labor costs, all of it. Even capital is accumulated labor and so on.
Maybe just understand this. So employers
Yes.
are paid in gold.
Employees, the workers.
Employees.
Or in silver, yeah.
Okay. So let's say they're paid 3 grams, whatever, in per month.
They can be paid in the real bills.
Well, they may be paid in banknotes backed by real bills.
Backed by real bills.
They would probably not be paid in real bills, they're too big.
Yeah. The whole idea of the real bill is that you can pay your workforce before you've actually sold the good. You know?
You can't pay 100 employees with such a real bill of 300,000 gold.
Well, no, you come back to your employees and say, I've got this receipt signed by Louis who's going to sell the coal for me. And then you go to the bank will chop up the real bill into units, give you a banknote, and you use that banknote to pay your employees. And if Louis doesn't sell the
That was a
coal,
point that I didn't get.
yeah.
And the banknotes are covered 100% by gold.
Gold or real bills.
What's the gold? Okay. Yeah. That's what the Scottish banking system is all about.
Again, this bank notes are a convenience thing, but small change can be made in silver coins. That's usually how it was. When they built the Panama Canal, back in the early, what was it, 1900, before World War I, I think. Anyway, they had 2 layers of employees. The American engineer types were paid in gold, and the laborers from everywhere else were paid in silver. And there was a gold housing unit and a gold shopping center and all this stuff, and a slightly downscale, you can imagine, silver, So that's fine. It works fine.
It's just the one that didn't get.
Bring him up. Bring him up.
Cash is
Bring up your beefs. I want to hear them.
exactly.
Absolutely.
You know, you can, if you lend money to Boeing, for example, to build aircraft, okay, and it's a 5-year loan, you've got a bond, and they've got the money, they're building aircraft. You can use that bond in payment for something else, but the point is, who would accept it? No one. Well, they might accept a Boeing bond because they know they'll sell planes.
How would you finance long-term projects? Only with 90%, with 90 days?
No, not at all. With gold bonds. Exactly what Sandeep was talking about. But you've got your bifurcation of this. You've got your credit, and you've got, borrowing and clearing. Okay? And this is also a time situation. Borrowing is longer term, and this is shorter term. This is 91 days. And this is driven by...
So the real bill market?
Real bill market is for
and the
clearing.
bond market.
Yes.
I don't have space for clear and bond.
Okay.
And here the interest rate kicks in. Because in order to buy a bond, you need savings, you need money now.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, guys? Sure? I want to make sure.
Yeah.
You have to put money in to get the bond, and it brings you back one later. This one, you get the goods right now, and you pay it later. It's a different situation. And that's the most efficient. Louis, when you said it costs nothing to society, I thought it was quite an interesting statement.
Yeah.
It really is, because it's just part of the process. And that's the reciprocal between society. What does society contribute to this? Well, society gets goods it needs, absolutely at the lowest possible cost. And in return, it says, okay, so there is a value going both ways. Lovely system. Yes?
Is it fair, like the bills are the credit market and gold, cash?
The bills are the clearing market. Clearing. That clearing means moving goods quickly through clearing. Let's suppose, there is another thing that you can talk about this forever, and I love to talk about it. Let's say you're shipping cabbages from a farm in California to New York. So the farmer grows them, and suddenly they're picked up by a local jobber or whatever, and they put on train, and they go on, and they go to the wholesale and retail, and they're sold to the customer. Who owns this cabbage? Does the railroad company that moved it or the trucker own the cabbage? No, they're really doing a service. The farmer puts it out, and it ends up there. So while it's in progress, the real ownership is not really very clear at all. I mean, it's in a warehouse for a while, the next day it goes further. The warehouse doesn't really own this cabbage or this lettuce. See that? They don't buy it, they get paid to clear it, to pass it through.
Is it fair to say that under an unadulterated gold standard, there is no long-term credit?
No, there is long-term credit, but that's under the bond market.
Is there savings, no?
I'm sorry?
Isn't this the savings part?
Yes, that's the savings part. Bonds?
So basically you cannot spend something that you don't have.
Oh, hello.
I love that.
We turn gold into fish, right? Just like you turn stones into... what do you do? Time? Okay, so guys, Sandy gave me the time signal. You want to take a break and continue? Or you want to go on a little bit and then we'll end it all? It's up to you. I'm happy either way.
You can go on.
You want to continue? So we go another 10, 15 minutes? Okay, great. I think everybody's all cranked up. So shoot. Question?
Could I go once more to the quantitative theory of money?
The quantity theory?
Yeah, which we are here also in critique of.
Which critique do you want to review? The Mengerian critique or the internal logic critique?
No, I would just, for me or for anyone who's interested, like to sum up perhaps the difference within a gold standard that an increase of gold doesn't result in inflation, whereas the paper money obviously does.
But why does it? Why does more paper cause inflation?
Because it's not a constant margin utility, I guess.
Why not? Isn't it money?
No.
Oh! You got it. It's not money. Because money is gold. This is 5,000 years of history. Human experience has proved it beyond doubt. And the redeemable bills were based on gold and redeemable in gold. And this new paper is not redeemable in gold. Look at this chart again. When redeemably was chopped, this thing went up, this just went up and up and up. And that was the last vestige of attachment to the gold, to the numeraire, to real money. And the quantity of gold within a very large range. I mean, what if Yamashita's gold is true? They claim, and you know the story of Yamashita's gold? What happened was the Nazis stole a bunch of gold in Europe, and they stashed it away. And MacArthur and some other guys got wind of this, and they found the stash, and it was done fairly well in the open. There are videos of it, a bunch of gold, and other horrors we don't want to talk about. And that was it. But the Japanese presumably did the same thing in the rape of Nanjing and in Asia and whatever. Why not? I mean, they were on the same type of attitude. This never came to light. And so therefore, the odds are pretty good that there was a bunch of gold and wealth and treasures stashed away, and somehow clandestinely it's been, released into the market. CIA or whatever, dark guys in dark, was it black clothes or something? Dark helicopters. But it doesn't really matter. It does not matter. Because The marginal utility of gold is flat, so if there's another, I don't know, 90,000 tons, it just means there's a bigger stock to flows ratio. Gold is even better money. Yes,
I'll just make one comment on that, which is, I don't want to wander off the subject too much, but I thought about that what's his name's gold.
Yeah.
And the amount of gold in the record, as I understand it, is based upon known mining records since Roman times. All that's in the records. It's only lost afterwards.
Maybe.
Where it is, but it actually must have been in the record. Well, probably is in the records anyway.
That's if everybody dug gold and reported that they dug it.
That's another variable.
Wow.
That's another huge variable, far bigger than what's his name, which is that.
History didn't begin with Rome.
Exactly. I was just going to say the Indians had mined out their country well before the Romans were even thought of.
So nobody really knows accurately, and it doesn't really matter. And that's why I said when we did the little thingy with the demand, you can set this at pretty well any level, as long as you're not ridiculously off. Okay, here's another thing that maybe we can touch on. Remember I talked about Crusoe picking up a little shell and sticking it up there? Okay. So, same kind of thing with gold. Gold has a value, not necessarily utilitarian value. It had some value because it was pretty and malleable and people love to look at it, blah, blah, blah. And then it became money through that process. So did silver. And for how many years in history, the silver-gold ratio has been roughly 15 to 1, 16 to 1, and it's been, I don't know, for how long? Give me an idea, 1,000 years? No, forever. Well, somehow silver was demonetized, but in the meantime, silver became a very in-demand industrial metal. There's good demand for it in silver solder, and mirrors, and antiseptic properties, and conductors, and blah, blah, blah. And yet its value has crashed. Why? Well, presumably, I believe it has lost its monetary value, at least for the time being. So there are people out there who say a basket of goods should be backing money, right? Like oil and this and that, and this is a bunch of balderdash, because all these things, first of all, you don't balderdash, BS in polite terms, doesn't work. And it's been tried. It's been tried. Remember the assignats in France? They put land behind this. Now, land is the most illiquid asset possible. The real estate is incredibly illiquid. It takes months to sell it, and the price spread is huge. They want to use this to back notes? No. You have to use money to back notes. Money to back notes, not stuff to back so-called money.
But that was clever, because that was land they stole from the church.
Was that the word they used? Was it confiscate or was? Yeah, sure. I know.
So it all comes down to marginal utility again with oil, for instance. If many people say oil, a commodity basket, as you just said.
Let's look at silver again, because silver still has some monetary value and potentially a lot of monetary value, because people may rediscover that silver is actually money. If you're a factory and you buy silver solder, you need only so much a month, because you solder so many radiators or whatever you do. So if you're offered more and more units of silver, you don't want it. You have no need for it. And if you're building, antiseptic socks, now they're putting them into socks, little bits of silver. Again, there's only so much demand. So marginal utility drops quickly. You need what you need and no more. But if it's money, there's no limit to how much people want of it. And it plays out in no other metal beside gold and silver, no other stuff has this virtue. And they try to pretend that paper is money, but I think the pretense is falling apart. The faith and credit is going away. These sovereign risk is rising. That means they don't have faith and credit in the ability of these sovereign nations to pay back this debt ever. I mean, presumably they couldn't last year either, but now people are starting to notice this. It's coming to people's attention. Yes,
Is the real bill money?
no. Gold is money, and perhaps silver. A real bill has monetary value. It works as a means of exchange. But again, we said, well, maybe we didn't touch on this. What properties does stuff have to have in order to become money, it has to have a specific value. You can't use rocks and gravel as money, there's too much of it. It has to hold its value. It has to be fungible.
It has to be a unit of account.
Well, it becomes unit of account once it becomes money. That's
what you ask, what you need.
yeah, well, sure. So for 91 days, this bill holds its value, but after that, it has no value. So the bill is not money because it doesn't hold value for long term. However, the stream of social circulating capital is a different story. That never extinguishes, it's always there. So the bill market per se has value flowing through it, and that value exists unlimited time. It just changes its size and its composition. But one bill is not money. It matures into money on the date, maturity date. But it does serve as a means of exchange. It only serves one function. Money has to be a means of exchange and a store of value through time. Is that okay? Yeah, Rudy?
When did real bills start?
I think way back. A professor talked about this, the fairs back in the
Middle Ages.
Middle Ages?
Yeah.
You think about fairs where merchants bring their goods from different places and they want to buy and sell stuff. Now, if they would have to bring enough gold to buy all the stuff they want to buy, they would have to take all their gold out of use, out of circulation, whatever, and bring it with them, and it's dangerous and blah, blah, blah. So what they want to do is sell stuff and exchange it for other stuff. But if they don't have enough gold to buy stuff, they're obliged to sell before they can buy. And if every merchant shows up wanting to sell, who's going to buy? No buyers. They don't bring gold with them. So the merchant fair creates scrip money. And that expires when the fair ends. And the merchant brings in his stuff, and somebody who's knowledgeable in the market looks at it, says, yeah, whatever, a carriage full of grain or something, we'll give you so much scrip for it. And then they use this scrip to exchange with other merchants, and at the end of the fair, it's all netted out, and they take the stuff they want back. And these are kind of a precursor to real bills. They serve as a means of exchange, temporary monetary value, backed by real goods. But it's not money.
But yes, that's right. That was the precursor to the real bills.
Yes, one precursor.
But which countries actually used real bills?
Sorry? Was it the first country?
Which countries?
Well, at the end of the day, everybody, the whole British Empire used them.
British Empire.
Yeah.
Well, European,
Yeah.
France, Italy, Spain.
Yeah, sure. It grew pretty fast. Yeah, they all did.
And real bills circulated in European countries until what day?
Till
German.
World War I, in effect.
1909? That's
1914.
14.
The war made an end
Made an
to
end.
all the confidence that was implicit with all the traders trading with each other.
Sure. And it was not reestablished after the war, so basically that's
100 years coming up soon?
time to resurrect this thing. Hey,
Yeah.
hopefully that's what we're doing here. I mean, that's the bottom line thing. This is not officially a Gold Standard Institute session. It's New Austrian Economics, but, we're kind of in bed here. Yes, sir.
Can I ask a further question?
Sure.
Based on something said a few days ago by somebody, I can't remember what, but it was said that after the First World War, real bills were not allowed to be reintroduced because it was such a sort of a punitive thing against the Germans. So they couldn't How do you stop a natural market phenomenon?
Well, could I quote, what was that Austrian economist's name? Sennholz. And I don't quote exactly, but he says something like, honest money and free banking are not impossible, they're merely illegal. And one day, the gold standard will make, throughout human history, the gold standard has made a comeback. When countries have gone off gold, they came back. Because at the end of the day, people will realize that honesty is the best policy. And you cannot build a society on theft.
But was it actually made illegal? Was made illegal?
Well, all the discount houses and all that stuff were out of business, and the banks took over with short-term credit.
So I don't know about all countries, but in the U.S., if if you're issuing monetary unit, so you're going to be arrested and fined and put in jail.
That's a little bit of it too. But the main thing is, don't forget.
Communities can barter, and you see that more and more, the phenomenon, but it's very localized, and it's not in competition to the monetary or currency of the country. But
Louis, don't forget the other thing Professor said, and it's very true. For real bills to circulate, they must mature into a better something, into a better form of money or better whatever. I mean, who would trade a real bill, which is an earning interest, turns to gold, almost as good as gold, almost, for paper that's depreciating at a tremendous rate? It would make no sense. The real bills are better than banknotes today, much better. So unless gold is in general circulation, true real bill circulation cannot arise. After gold is money, or with it together, yeah.
But the gold was in circulation.
Absolutely. And even when legal tender laws were passed just before the First World War that made payment in paper just as legitimate as payment in gold, gold still circulated alongside with the paper, but then it was pushed aside more and more. You all know what legal tender laws were originally? Does anybody know?
I do not.
They were, when a gold coin is in circulation for a while, it wears. And it wears and it wears and it wears. And eventually it wears down to 90%, 80% gold. So legal tender law said the government, the official mint, the national mint, will replace worn coins with new full-bodied coins down to a certain loss. That's all it meant, legal tender. And if the gold coin was under that level, whatever number was, then it would be weighed and the value determined by the weight of gold.
Yeah, it's a complete opposite of what legal tender means today.
Yes.
An absolute complete opposite. It was a service the state provided at no charge. This coin is the coin of the realm, so if yours is worn out, bring it in. We'll issue a new one because it is legal tender. Now, you printed this paper and you got to take it.
You should change the battery.
Well, if we're going to go on a bit more, I will change the battery. Yeah? Okay. Take a minute.
Passing those new legal tender laws. So,
Okay, we're back up. Legal tender. The name was all twisted around. A lot of things were twisted around. Yes, Mark.
So these commonly known arguments against normal gold standard or a gold standard without real bills actually are valid. Could one put it like that? And that's why it actually really wouldn't work, or wouldn't work very good at least.
Not what the Rothbard, what Professor calls the Rothbardian gold standard, where the bank must have only cash gold backing its notes. That can't work. How could it? There's not enough. In that case, there really is not enough gold, because all this gold would be sitting in the bank vaults to back those notes, and there would be no flexibility and no amplification of the economic activity. So real bills must be there as the clearing arm. So it's no point talking about one without the other.
So the critiques actually have their point.
Oh, absolutely.
Criticize.
Here's something we talked about during a lunch break. When you go into a court of law and you're sworn in as a witness, put your hand on Bible, Koran, whatever, what do they ask you? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Why those three things? Why not just tell the truth? Well, Yeah, I'll tell the truth. 2 and 2 is 4. The sun rises in the east. Can I go? No. And of course, nothing but the truth means you don't tell any lies alongside the truths you just told. But why the whole truth? What does that mean? I mean, there's so many truths in the world. What they really mean is the pertinent truth. What is significant to this particular court case? So in other words, what they're saying is don't lie by omission. Tell the whole truth that applies here. And this is the story. When this is chopped off and thrown away, whoever's telling you is lying by omission, either deliberately or not. Climate change. Oh, it used to be called the Great Ice Age is coming. Oh no, that was back 20 years ago. Now it's the global warming. Oh no, it's climate change. Wow. They show you a chart showing this rise in temperature and oh my God, it's awful. They don't show you the rest of the chart going back centuries, thousands of years, millions of years, where it goes, temperatures have gone way up and way down and all this. That's the whole truth. So the whole truth about gold is including the real bills and a lot of other stuff we didn't even touch on, like gold bonds and so on and so forth.
Is there not, well, unadulterated gold standard stands for a number of things, including, the fact that real bills have to circulate alongside gold being the only form of money. But
yes,
Rothbard's 100 Mises Institute's 100% gold standard is one of the things that implies is no fractional reserve banking. I think we agree on that, don't we? That there should be no fractional. What does our version of unadulterated gold standard actually mean from the point of view of reserve banking?
Well, the reserves have to be constrained to cash gold or perhaps cash silver, as silver is money, and real bills, nothing else.
Well, that's 100%. There's no fractional reserve.
Sure, because the real bills are paper. They're not.
So we agree with them on that, basically.
Against the word, against demand deposits, that would be fine, they're perfectly correct, But if you want a 3-year deposit, so you want to deposit your money for 3 years, obviously it can't be going back per se. I don't know what their view is on that. Do they want to ban that? So you can't lend your money out for 3 years, that's where their ambiguity lies.
But to understand this statement, you need Roman law, different kind of contract. Deposit on demand, a contract. Loan, another contract. And discount, another contract.
I can add something to this. When you bring your money to if you bring your goods to a warehouse, it's your goods. Okay? If you bring your chair to a warehouse for storage, you get a warehouse receipt, and it's your chair, and they're keeping it for you. And when you go back with your receipt, you get your chair back, right? There's no dispute on this. There's no controversy. Okay. If you bring a truckload of wheat, certain grade of wheat which is fungible, to the warehouse, and then you come back a month later with your receipt, what do you get back? Your wheat, but it may not be your grain, it may be somebody else's grain, but exactly the similar bunch of wheat. If you go back and get somebody else's chair, you ain't going to be a happy camper. So what do you mean? That's not my chair. But wheat is fungible, it doesn't matter. Unfortunately, back in, 1600s or whatever, there was a lawsuit in England where the judge decided that if you deposit your money, gold, in a bank, it's no longer your money, it's the bank's money. And this screwed up the whole thing.
If the deposit is on demand, for Roman law, the money, the gold, is of the client, not of the bank.
No, it's unallocated gold, and you're a general creditor of the bank.
Right,
Under Roman law. Oh, okay. You mean back then?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. No, I said in 1600 or whatever. There was a bridge, and from then on in, all this shenanigans started, because the bank now, you're a creditor of the bank, but it's like the difference between allocated and unallocated gold. It's not really your gold.
It's like if you're going to take a 2-year deposit, you might think, oh, that's nice, I'm getting 5% per year, 2-year deposit, from NatWest. But in the back of the mind, you should realise that the loan at the other end could go sour. It's not,
You've actually lent your
you
money.
lend money, just because it says Royal Bank of Scotland on your bank statement every month, you've actually lent money. They've been the intermediary.
Yeah, that's true. And of course, that's the counterparty risk that's playing out today.
For me, the easiest way to visualize this, the difference between when you deposit, whether it's on the bank or something at the bank, what effectively you're doing is lending your money to the bank. It's because the bank's paying you.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Whereas if you are going to store gold, you're paying the fucking bank.
Yes,
Absolutely.
100%.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Because they can't do anything with it. Right? It's
Well,
saying-
legally not. They would have to actually steal it,
No.
so, yeah. Sure.
Allocate the storage.
Good. Oh, we touched a lot of things. That was fun. And who else got anything else? That's it? Well, maybe we should call it a day, and tomorrow Professor Fekete will be back to do the final session. And if you guys have any questions that come up overnight, which sometimes happen, we'll talk about it tomorrow.
2, 3 a.m. and call me what's your
If it's seriously about gold, I'll be there. I'm telling you.